Hello, my name is Sam.
And my name is Kelly. Welcome to Have You Heard About This Case, a true crime and beyond podcast. Thank you for joining us on this adventure we're about to start.
We want to spend a little bit of time giving you some background on us and tell you why we've decided to enter this true crime and paranormal podcasting world. First of all, Kelly and I met a few years ago. We worked together and we ended up carpooling nearly every day. During these rides, we discovered that we both have an interest in true crime and shared some of our favorite podcasts with each other.
We quickly started our rides by saying, "What have you heard about this case?" Or "Have you heard about this case?" to each other so many times. This led us to explore and research new cases as we bounced off each other, hence the name of our show. The first case we ended up talking about in depth was the death of Lauren Agee, which I feel like we're going to cover at some point. Over the years, we've definitely fed each other's interests in true crime and influenced each other's points of view on different cases with in-depth conversations after doing our own research. So basically, we decided to record our conversations and share the research we've done.
You will occasionally hear a third voice. Hopefully, you'll hear it frequently. And even though we haven't really done any episodes yet, I'm going to consider her an honorary host. My sister, Ash, will be joining us, but it's going to be when her schedule allows it. She's not only an incredible woman, but she is also an incredibly busy woman. But she adds so much to our conversations. Not only are we just friends and we really enjoy talking about true crime to each other, but she brings a very different type of expertise to the conversation. Ash is a volunteer firefighter and a first responder. She has so much more knowledge about police and medical response than me or Kelly combined. So even though she might not be recording an episode, I'm positive that Kelly and I will be asking her questions in the background, just so we can understand circumstances and experiences from Ashley and her work in the fire department. And I'm sure when she's on an episode, she'll give you a little bit more information about herself.
We're sure our show will evolve as it goes on, but our general layout will be for one of us to present the case to the other or others. I'm sure we'll often talk about cases that others have heard before, but our goal is to spark up a conversation so our show will not be fully scripted. You can tell the full script is a little uncomfortable. You want it to be more conversational.
And the idea of this all started back a couple of years ago with me and Ash, but our lives independently just kept getting in the way of us recording. And we also live in different states from each other. So it was very difficult to get on the same schedule and try to get this all to happen. Eventually, after a couple years, I finally got Ash and Kelly to meet in person. And it really kind of suddenly felt like this is the right combination that we were looking for to push it into gear and start recording.
Throughout our episodes, you will definitely get to know us. I count on it. But to give you a little bit of insight into who we are, Sam and I both live in Chicago. I've been here 8 years after I turned tail from Ohio and ran post-college. The first time I encountered true crime, I was around 12 years old enough that I could use the internet service myself, but we're still working with dial-up, one computer, it will shut off the phone line internet. I don't remember how I got there, but I will always remember the portrait of her face. Elizabeth Short, white flowers in her shiny black hair. Unfortunately, I will also always remember the uncensored photographs of the crime scene. I remember how she has been reduced to a nickname she never claimed herself, but was only given in death, the Black Dahlia. It sparked something deep in my young brain. Humans do these things to other humans. Why? That's the only thought I could formulate then, and one I'm still turning over today in all of these cases. I think for any true crime fan, that question can be the crucible to forge a lifelong obsession. We may never know who murdered Elizabeth Short, but the same kind of human that committed that murder then walks the streets today. And they need to be researched so we can better understand them and protect ourselves from them. And that's what pushed me into an interest in true crime. I was following cases and taking my own private notes when Sam and Ashley began the first incarnation of the podcast. I was lucky enough that they welcomed me to record an episode with them, and we three discussed Lauren Agee's case, which we mentioned before. We never released it, but we'll love to redo the episode since that was about a year ago. I got lucky again when Sam and Ashley asked me to join them, and I've never said yes quicker to anything since my husband asked me to marry him. And that is true. I've been married for 3 years to a software coding, clockmaking inventor and creator. Our best friend is a 25-pound terrier named Arthur that we adopted at 6 weeks, and he is now 2 years old.
He is the cutest little pup. And I moved to Chicago about 10 years ago. I've spent most of my childhood living in Wisconsin, which is where Ash still lives. I'm originally from the suburbs of Chicago, though, but I moved to Wisconsin when I was 9 and decided to move to Chicago after college. I've always had an interest in true crime, and I can't really even say where it started, but I'd assume it probably started from shows like Forensic Files and Unsolved Mysteries. And back when I was a kid, I was watching a lot of those shows with Ash, but we never really talked about it outside of the house. I didn't really have any friends who expect similar interests. So it kind of just felt like something you don't really talk about because so many people just assumed it was creepy. Mm-hmm. And I think in retrospect nowadays, a lot of people had that sort of hidden interest in true crime. And I'm loving that the stigma of it being creepy and morbid isn't much of a thing anymore. Mm-hmm. But I do remember one of the first cases looking up, I was probably about the same age as you. I was about 12. And it was Kurt Cobain. Oh. And I remember when I started babysitting and having a little bit of my own spending cash, my parents took me to go buy my first CDs and they let me pick out whatever I wanted. It was kind of this special thing that we did. We came all the way from Wisconsin to the Chicago area to go to this special record store. And the first album I bought was Nirvana. And I immediately fell in love with it. And as you can kind of tell, traveling all the way from Wisconsin to Illinois to go to a record store, music was a really big deal in our house. But we listened to a ton of classic rock. And I never really listened to Nirvana before this point. And this was a good handful of years after his death. And I remember sitting on my computer, similar to you, Kelly, just on dial-up, reading blogs and anything I could about his death because I was so interested on people's theories on whether it was suicide or murder. And I'm sure at some point we'll cover this case. So I really don't want to go too far into it because it is such a controversial kind of opinion and people are very one-sided towards the other. And I know you and I have talked about it a lot and we'll probably end up recording about it.
Because we both love Nirvana so much. We do.
Yeah, and it's a great conversation because there's great discussions on either side of that case. But outside of my interest in true crime, I basically consider myself living a pretty basic life. I do have a 9-to-5, and I come home to a little fur ball that I named Rigby. He's a cat I rescued about 5 years ago. And he is definitely the type of cat where I sit home and I watch my scary movies and he protects me on the couch.
Rigby is such a good cat. He's a rescue that has come so far. Good job, Sam.
He's a little menace, but he's cute.
We also do have a couple disclaimers. First of all, this is a true crime and paranormal podcast. We likely will not be providing this disclaimer in every episode, but what we will discuss is not going to be for all listeners. Please use your own discretion while listening. If we feel like something that is pertinent to the episode is especially gruesome or triggering, we will try to provide a warning. But please understand that the topics of this podcast will likely include some triggering information. We're going to be as careful to protect you as we can, but it is a true crime-based space.
And our second disclaimer is a bit on a lighter note. As we just mentioned, we do have pets, and they very much rule our household. I have Rigby, Kelly has Arthur, Ash has 2 dogs of her own, Jules and Sergeant Pepper, and she has a cat, Melly. So at some point, I guarantee you will hear these animals in the background.
Somebody's going to have something to say.
Do everything they can to get our attention and get their voice heard at some point. And kind of along those same sort of lines that Kelly and I both live in Chicago, you might at this moment be able to hear the L behind me. So if you hear some city sounds, it's just because we are very close to very loud areas of the city, and you'll probably hear it at some point.
It's true. We will do our best to prevent outside noises, but we're not audio experts. Luckily, in my situation, I am up high from the street noise currently, but if the Chicago Marathon runners come by, you guys might hear them. They're running today. We're not audio experts. If there are any audio experts who have simple tips for beginners, we'd be happy to take some setup recommendations.
We would greatly appreciate setup recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can find us on Instagram at Have You Heard About This Case Pod, or you can also email us at haveyouheardaboutthiscase@gmail.com.
We're so excited to start this journey with you all. Thank you for tuning in and listening this long already.
And we'll talk to you soon.
We'll tell you what we've heard.